Welcome back to Starz Recapped. Today we're diving into the thrilling 2025 blockbuster Jurassic World Rebirth. Set years after the chaos of the Fallen Kingdom, humanity is forced to share the Earth with dinosaurs once again. But when science pushes boundaries even further, a new breed of genetically enhanced predators emerges, stronger, smarter, and deadlier than anything before. Survival becomes a global struggle as humans fight not only to coexist, but to prevent the extinction of their own kind. Get ready, because this is not just another chapter in the Jurassic saga. It's the rebirth of an era where humans are no longer at the top of the food chain. In the year 2010, a powerful biotech corporation known as InGen carries out secret genetic experiments on an isolated island, where they attempt to create new hybrid species of dinosaurs. During one of the tests, a scientist carelessly drops a candy wrapper, which gets pulled into an airlock system. This small mistake triggers a malfunction, rebooting the entire security door mechanism. Chaos follows. Alarms blare and staff scramble for safety. In the rush, one scientist bravely tries to manually secure the doors to keep the creatures contained. Tragically, another employee becomes trapped inside. Desperate, he cries out for help, but his colleague refuses to open the door, fearing a massive breakout. Within moments, a colossal dinosaur emerges from the shadows and drags the helpless man away, ending his life. Fast forward to 2027. Dinosaurs have now roamed the Earth for over 3 decades. Yet the modern environment, with its changing climate and unfamiliar diseases, has wiped out most of them. The awe and wonder that once surrounded these prehistoric beasts has faded, and humanity has largely moved on. The few remaining dinosaurs can only survive near the equatorial belt, the last stretch of land that still mimics their ancient habitats. Strict international laws forbid humans from entering this zone. Meanwhile, in New York City, a man named Martin finds himself stuck in gridlock traffic, caused not by cars, but by a massive apatosaurus wandering the streets. As he waits, a skilled mercenary named Zora unexpectedly slips into his vehicle. She delivers a proposal. Martin's superiors at a pharmaceutical company desperately need dinosaur blood to finalize a revolutionary cure for heart disease. The catch? Zora must venture into the restricted dinosaur territory to retrieve it. At first, she refuses the risky mission, but the promise of a life-changing reward convinces her otherwise. Their next stop is a natural history museum, where they meet Dr. Henry, the scientist shutting down the dinosaur exhibit due to declining interest. Henry was the first to suggest using dinosaur DNA for medical breakthroughs, making him the perfect candidate for the task. Martin insists that Henry accompany them, not just to collect blood samples, but to provide his expertise, while Zora acts as protection. Henry explains that the only way to succeed is to draw blood from the largest dinosaurs, as they possess the strongest heart muscles. He identifies 3 targets: the colossal Titanosaurus from the land, the mighty Mosasaurus from the sea, and the airborne giant Quetzalcoatlus. The samples must be taken while the creatures are still alive, a nearly impossible challenge. Initially hesitant, Henry finally agrees when Martin reminds him this could be his once-in-a-lifetime chance to encounter real dinosaurs face to face. The following day, the team boards a flight to Suriname, where Zora reconnects with her old friend Duncan. Although he had agreed over the phone to help with their mission, meeting in person changes his resolve. He now wants to back out, fearing the risks involved. After a tense back and forth, Martin finally persuades him to stay on by offering an even larger payment. With Duncan back on board, they set sail on his boat. Being familiar with the region, Duncan carefully chooses hidden routes to avoid detection by authorities. While at sea, the group studies a map of the area. Dr. Henry then reveals his specially designed tranquilizer darts, engineered to pierce through the incredibly thick hides of dinosaurs, provided the shooter is within at least 10 feet. Each dart is equipped to automatically collect and eject a blood sample, but there's only one chance per dinosaur. No room for mistakes. Elsewhere, Ruben takes his daughters Isabella and Teresa along with Teresa's boyfriend Xavier on a family sailing trip across the open ocean. During their journey, they notice movement in the water, at first mistaking the fins for dolphins. But as the shape comes closer, it becomes clear this is something much larger. Suddenly, the massive form rams against the boat before disappearing beneath the waves. Concerned, Ruben climbs down to inspect for damage and feels a moment of relief when everything seems intact. But their relief doesn't last. The creature reemerges, this time revealing itself as a gigantic mosasaurus. With a powerful strike, it nearly capsizes the vessel. The beast slips away again, but only briefly. The boat shudders, loses balance, and ultimately overturns. Panicked, the family leaps into the sea to avoid being crushed. However, Xavier ends up trapped inside as the rising water presses against the door, preventing his escape. As the boat begins to fully overturn, Ruben helps his daughters climb back onto the wreckage. He yells for Xavier to grab the radio from the emergency bag before escaping. Xavier manages to find the bag, then forcefully kicks the blocked door until it bursts open, allowing him to swim out. Meanwhile, Ruben pulls himself onto the flipped hull. Underwater, Xavier spots the enormous mosasaurus gliding past. Terrified, he swims upward as fast as he can, the creature trailing behind him. Just before it can strike, the predator dives beneath the boat and vanishes, giving Xavier a chance to climb aboard with the rest of the family. The next morning, the expedition crew is awakened by a distress signal from the family's radio. Martin and the head of security, Bobby, suggest ignoring it, but Zora insists they respond. Duncan sides with her and orders his crew to alter course. Not long after, Ruben spots their vessel in the distance and fires a flare to signal their location. The family is brought to safety, though questions quickly arise. Zora wonders aloud why a mosasaurus would attack a random sailboat. Henry explains his theory, that the massive reptile may have mistaken it as a rival intruder in its territory. When the family presses for details about the group's mission, the team avoids giving answers. Suddenly, the radar blares. Something is closing in fast. Before anyone can react, the mosasaurus crashes against their boat, shaking it violently. The beast even breaches the surface, leaping high above the waves. As chaos erupts, Zora straps herself in on deck with Henry's help, readying the special dart gun. Duncan pushes the boat to full speed, trying to outmaneuver the creature. Zora takes her shot, but the dart misses and splashes into the sea. The predator lunges again, nearly colliding with the ship. Henry quickly hands her another dart, but before she can fire, the mosasaurus slams the boat, causing Zora to slip and dangle dangerously over the side. She hangs on tightly until Henry pulls her back up. This time, she steadies herself and fires a perfect shot. The dart pierces the creature's hide and immediately begins extracting blood. Once the sample is collected, the capsule ejects with a tiny parachute, gently drifting down until Henry manages to catch it, marking their first successful retrieval. As the crew cheers over their successful sample, Zora and Dr. Henry carefully store the vial inside a chilled case. But while handling it, Henry begins to voice his concerns. He confesses that he's uneasy about the mission. He knows the pharmaceutical company will likely reserve the cure only for the wealthy, even though, in his view, true science should benefit all of humanity. Before anyone can respond, chaos strikes again. The mosasaurus resurfaces, but this time it isn't alone. Swimming alongside it are several Spinosaurus, shocking Henry, who realizes the two species have somehow formed a symbiotic partnership. The team rushes to defend the ship. Bobby storms onto the deck and opens fire, unloading round after round, but his shots barely scratch the beasts. Duncan warns him to stop wasting ammunition, but Bobby ignores him. In the next instant, a Spinosaurus lunges from the sea behind him, snatching Bobby in its jaws before plunging back beneath the waves. The Mosasaurus then performs another massive leap, crashing into the water with such force that the entire vessel trembles. The impact nearly throws co-pilot Nina overboard, leaving her clinging to the edge for her life. At the same time, Isabella slips across the slick floor, nearly tumbling over the railing. Ruben manages to catch her hand in time, injuring his leg in the struggle, but he pulls her to safety just as the Mosasaurus snaps at the spot where she had been dangling, its teeth closing around nothing but metal bars. The boat rights itself, giving Nina a chance to scramble back aboard. Thinking fast, Duncan steers toward the rocky shallows, knowing that the larger dinosaurs can't maneuver in water that shallow. Zora, worried about a crash, begins preparing life jackets for everyone, while Henry carefully secures the precious blood sample along with essential supplies in case they need to abandon ship. Teresa grabs the radio and frantically calls for help, but Martin rushes over and forcefully tries to stop her, without revealing that their entire mission is outside the law. In the struggle, Teresa shoves him away, loses her balance, and slips over the railing. She manages to cling to the edge, but Martin refuses to help, and she plunges into the water below. Without hesitation, Xavier seizes a rescue float and dives in after her. Fearing the vessel won't hold together much longer, Reuben straps a life jacket on Isabella and leaps into the sea with her as well. The Mosasaurus returns with devastating force, ramming the boat against jagged rocks and dragging it along, tearing into the hull. Henry and Zora barely dodge falling debris as the engine explodes, knocking crewman L, Clerk, to the ground. Despite the chaos, Duncan wrestles with the controls and manages to guide the crippled vessel into the shallow waters where the larger predators cannot easily follow. Once they near the rocky shore, everyone abandons ship, splashing into the waves as the Mosasaurus finally veers away. The boat smashes into the coastline and wedges itself on a stone outcrop. Exhausted but alive, the survivors gather whatever bags of supplies they can carry and begin swimming toward land. But just as crew member reaches for one of the packs, disaster strikes. A massive Spinosaurus bursts from the shallows, seizing her in its powerful jaws. The horrified group can do nothing but watch helplessly as she is dragged beneath the water, disappearing with the predator. Martin warns the group that they can't anticipate what awaits them on the island, since every dinosaur here is the result of past genetic experiments carried out by InGen. Zora then cuts through the perimeter fence of the jungle, clearing their entry point. She explains that she has arranged for a backup plan. If no contact is made within 24 hours, a rescue helicopter will arrive at sunset, but it will only hover for 2 minutes, giving them a very narrow window to escape. Venturing deeper, the team soon reaches a swamp they must cross in order to move forward. While wading through, Zora presses Martin about Teresa's fall, but he feigns ignorance and acts as if he saw nothing. As they struggle through the murky water, Zora keeps feeling something brushing against her leg. Her suspicions are confirmed when a massive eel bursts from the water, startling everyone, before disappearing back beneath the surface without attacking. Later, Martin pauses at a river to drink. As he bends down, he notices a set of old military dog tags. Suddenly, drops of blood splash onto his hand. Looking up, he discovers the wreckage of an old helicopter lodged high in the trees. The pilot's skeleton still grips a handgun. Using a stick, Martin dislodges the weapon and secretly keeps it for himself, hiding the discovery from the rest of the team. Elsewhere, Xavier manages to reunite with Teresa, and soon Reuben and Isabella join them. Together, they swim until they come across a hidden cavern leading inland. On the other side, they are awestruck by the lush landscape where remnants of InGen's past operations remain, pipes stretching through the vegetation. Remembering that the team had mentioned old facilities, Reuben suggests they follow the pipelines to locate the abandoned structures. While exploring, Isabella peeks behind a bush and is surprised to spot a tiny dinosaur, the gentle Aqualops. Reuben reassures her that it's harmless since it's a herbivore, but Teresa drives it away out of fear. A moment later, Xavier tugs on a plant and a loud dinosaur roar echoes nearby, forcing the group to quickly change direction. By nightfall, the group rests around a fire. When Xavier steps away into the darkness, the small Aqualops cautiously approaches the camp again. Isabella wakes, offers it some food, and the little creature nestles beside her, falling asleep at her side. While Xavier steps aside to relieve himself, he fails to notice 2 velociraptors creeping up behind him. Before they can strike, a terrifying mutodon bursts from the trees and attacks them. Xavier freezes in place, holding his breath and refusing to move a muscle while the predators battle it out. He even stops himself midstream until the clash ends and the creatures scatter. Only then does he finally relax. The next morning, Zora's group treks into a wide valley, guided by the distant calls of giants. To their amazement, they stumble upon a herd of titanosaurs. 2 of them are in the middle of mating, which Henry interprets as the perfect distraction. Overcome with awe, he edges close enough to lay a trembling hand on one of their massive legs. Tears welling in his eyes, the herd remains calm and peaceful, giving Zora the opening she needs. She loads her dart gun, fires, and secures a blood sample without resistance. Meanwhile, Reuben and his family press on, slowed by his injured leg. The little Aqualops refuses to leave them, trailing behind faithfully. Isabella affectionately names it Dolores and tucks it into her bag, insisting she'll keep it as a pet. Their journey takes a sudden turn when they fail to notice a slope concealed behind a thick tree. All of them tumble down the hill, rolling helplessly for several minutes before landing at the edge of a river. Reuben catches the scent of something foul, and a frightened Dolores bolts into the forest. Looking across the riverbank, the group spots an old shed, seemingly abandoned. Teresa notices what looks like a small boat nearby and volunteers to retrieve it. She wades through the water and makes it across, but her relief vanishes when she stumbles upon the half-eaten corpse of a dinosaur. Suddenly, a Dilophosaurus screeches at her, but instead of attacking, it flees, terrified of a far greater threat. Teresa then sees it, a massive Tyrannosaurus Rex slumbering in the bushes. Carefully, she sneaks into the shed, accidentally startling a swarm of bats that scatter into the sky. Inside, she realizes the boat she spotted is broken, but she discovers a bag containing an emergency inflatable raft. On the opposite shore, Dolores briefly reappears, but Isabella tries to shoo it away by tossing scraps of food. Teresa drags the raft to the river's edge and, ignoring her family's frantic whispers, pulls the lever. With a deafening hiss, the raft inflates instantly, the noise loud enough to rouse the T-Rex from its nap. For the moment, the beast is facing another direction, giving Teresa precious time. She scrambles onto the raft and paddles furiously back across the river. Ruben, Isabella, and Xavier pile aboard as well, leaving Dolores behind on the riverbank. Just then, the T-Rex locks eyes on the family and charges after them. They paddle desperately, but to their horror, the massive predator plunges into the water, using the current to propel itself faster. In moments, it bursts ahead of them, smashing into the raft and sending everyone tumbling into the river. The rapids drag Ruben along at high speed, allowing him to narrowly avoid the snapping jaws. He manages to fight his way towards some rocks, where Teresa and Xavier also scramble to safety. But Isabella is nowhere to be seen, until her screams give her away. She's hiding beneath the overturned raft, which the T-Rex now bites and thrashes violently. Its teeth can't pierce the tough plastic, so it lifts the raft and shakes it furiously, trying to expose the prey inside. At the last possible moment, Isabella slips free and rushes back toward her family. The T-Rex lunges after her, but she makes it behind the rocks where the others are concealed. The predator tries to squeeze through, but the gap between the stones is too narrow. Frustrated, it finally stomps away, leaving the family hidden and shaken. Moments later, the river's current delivers the battered raft back to them, giving them a chance to regroup. Elsewhere, Zora's team endures hours of climbing before finally reaching the top of a towering cliff. Overhead, the skies are patrolled by the deadly Quetzalcoatlus, a massive carnivorous flyer too dangerous to confront directly. Instead, the plan is to take a blood sample from one of its eggs. L. Clerk, skilled in rappelling, descends into the nest with ease. Dr. Henry, however, hesitates at the edge, forcing himself to summon the courage to follow. Zora climbs down after Henry, laughing at him when he nervously clings to the cliffside. At the summit, Duncan is fastening the ropes when he notices a small dinosaur darting past. Curious, he follows its path and realizes it has disappeared into the ruins of an ancient temple carved into the rock. Before he can investigate further, Henry's rope suddenly slips, sending him into free fall. But Duncan reacts quickly, grabbing hold and pulling him back to safety. The group continues their descent until they reach a vast cave, only to discover it is actually part of the temple itself. In the center lies a massive nest. Henry carefully begins extracting a sample, making sure not to harm the hatchling inside. While he works, Zora casually asks what he intends to do with the genetic material. Henry explains that his dream is to make the cure public and accessible, so anyone could reproduce it and save countless lives. Meanwhile, up above, L. Clerk secures the ropes but freezes when he sees the colossal Quetzalcoatlus mother returning to her nest. He shouts a warning just as the creature swoops down. Henry and the others dive behind the stone pillars, but Henry is quickly cornered. To draw the predator away, Zora yells, diverting its attention long enough for Henry to continue with the vial. Unfortunately, the giant flyer stomps near the nest, pinning the vial beneath its weight. Thinking fast, Clerk hurls a tool at the animal's head, startling it just enough for the vial to roll free. He calls out for rescue, and Duncan and Martin begin hauling him up the ropes. The Quetzalcoatlus lunges at him, but in the chaos, Henry manages to snatch the vial back. The danger isn't over. While the creature thrashes, it grips Henry's rope without realizing it, dragging him out of the temple and leaving him dangling over the abyss. Zora, nearly pulled down as well, braces her legs against the rock and clutches the rope to keep him from falling. In the frantic struggle, the vial slips from Henry's grip, tumbling onto a lower ledge. Against Zora's desperate warnings that the rope might snap, Henry swings himself back and forth over the void until, with one final lunge, he secures the vial once more. At the top of the cliff, Duncan and Martin keep tugging on the rope, but their focus is shattered when the massive Quetzalcoatlus swoops in, clutching L. Clerk's lifeless body in its beak. To their horror, the creature gulps him down whole before turning its attention to them, blocking their path with lightning speed. Panicked, Martin clutches the case containing the sample, and together with Duncan, they retreat into the ruins of the temple to escape. At that exact moment, the rope snaps, sending Henry plummeting into the river below. Fighting against the current, he manages to swim to the shore, just in time to see Duncan and Martin slipping out of a hidden passage in the ancient structure. Zora descends more carefully with the ropes, rejoining him moments later. Miraculously, the vial of precious genetic material floats down nearby, slowed by its parachute, and Henry secures it safely. For the first time, it feels like they might actually make it back alive. Later that evening, the exhausted family abandons their raft when they stumble upon the remains of modern buildings. Their cries for help echo through the empty structures, guiding Zora's team to them at last. Overjoyed, the two groups reunite, but the relief doesn't last long. Teresa immediately exposes Martin's betrayal, accusing him of abandoning her. Martin denies everything, brandishing a gun to keep everyone back and insisting she's lying. To ensure control, he locks the sample case to his wrist with handcuffs. Just then, Isabella notices a strange humming sound. Henry quickly recognizes it as a generator, likely running on a timer. A chilling dinosaur roar interrupts them. Seconds later, the generator sparks to life, flooding the old gas station with blinding lights and blaring music that echoes across the night. Out of nowhere, two terrifying mutadons emerge and charge toward the group. Chaos breaks out as everyone bolts in different directions. The family rushes into an old gas station, where Reuben and Xavier throw their weight against the door while one of the creatures slams at it from outside. They shove a heavy shelf in front as a barricade before moving deeper inside. In the confusion, Isabella notices Dolores and turns back for her. Just then, the mutadon crashes through the roof, forcing its way into the station. Thinking quickly, Isabella pulls Dolores into a walk-in fridge, shutting the door as the monster bellows and prowls nearby. The beast roars directly at the fridge, rattling it violently, until the rest of the family distracts it by hurling objects across the room. Taking advantage of the moment, Isabella slips out and carefully makes her way back to the others. While hiding behind the shelves, Reuben hears running water and discovers a hatch in the floor. They crawl into it just as the mutadon closes in, vanishing into the safety of a tunnel system. Elsewhere, Henry and Duncan are being pursued by the second beast. They dash into a laboratory and manage to slam the door shut, locking it before the creature can break through. Inside, Henry realizes this is the very place where unnatural experiments were conducted, the origins of the hybrid creatures. A grotesque specimen floats in a capsule as evidence. Duncan studies a wall map and discovers that tunnels run beneath the entire island, leading all the way to a dock where boats might be waiting. Meanwhile, the first mutadon charges at Zora, who dives under a jeep to hide. Martin is there too, and he opens fire, but every shot misses. The enraged beast lunges, seizing Martin and tossing him over the vehicle. Even while being dragged, Martin clings desperately to the sample case, losing his gun in the process. Zora seizes the weapon before the creature can notice. Just then, a rescue helicopter appears in the sky, but from above, the crew can't spot anyone on the ground. Seizing the chance, Martin jumps into a jeep and speeds off, forcing Zora to duck into hiding. One of the mutadons tries to intercept him, but the jeep rams through, shoving the creature aside before racing away. Drawn by the shouts of the family echoing in the tunnels, the beast prees open a drain cover and begins forcing its way down. Zora notices and quickly follows after it. Meanwhile, the helicopter prepares to depart, but Henry and Duncan escape the lab through a tunnel system. Henry fires a flare into the sky, signaling for rescue. The helicopter circles back, but before it can land, a monstrous hybrid T-Rex, known as the Distortus Rex, bursts out, clamping its massive jaws around the aircraft and hurling it to the ground in a fiery explosion. In the chaos, Duncan hears the family calling out. He and Henry open a drain lid to regroup with them. Suddenly, Zora emerges and opens fire just in time, killing the mutadon that lunges from the far end of the tunnel. With the threat gone, Duncan takes the lead, guiding everyone toward the docks. When they arrive, they find their way blocked by a heavy gate. As the mutadons crawl above them, Isabella squeezes through the bars to reach a control panel. Inside her bag, Dolores lets out a sharp cry, alerting her to the incoming D-Rex. Fear grips her, but the shouts of her family push her to focus on activating the panel. The massive predator nearly crashes into the tunnel entrance, but the roar of Martin's jeep pulls its attention. The D-Rex slams its paw down, stopping the vehicle cold. The family uses the distraction to slip through the open gate. The second mutadon attempts to pursue, but Zora slams the gate shut, trapping it inside. At that very moment, the D-Rex seizes Martin in its jaws and begins tearing him apart. His chained briefcase tumbles to the ground along with his severed hand. Zora grabs the suitcase and bolts with the others toward the docked boat. But when they arrive, a new problem awaits. The crane holding the vessel is jammed. The monstrous D-Rex suddenly emerges, charging straight toward Isabella. Henry quickly explains that the creature is drawn to bright light. To protect the others, Duncan ignites a flare and deliberately draws the beast's attention, luring it away from the group. He dives into the water, swimming further from the dock until the predator corners him. Meanwhile, Zora hacks through the chain holding the crane, finally releasing the boat. Everyone scrambles aboard, but the engine refuses to start. The D-Rex roars and leaps forward, ready to crush them, when Ruben desperately works the controls and finally gets the motor running. Just in time, the vessel pulls away, carrying the survivors out to open sea. As they drift further from the cursed island, a flare suddenly arcs across the sky. Realizing it's Duncan, the group steers toward it and manages to bring him aboard. By sunrise, the exhausted survivors gather their thoughts. Ruben notices Isabella still clutching Dolores close, relieved the pup made it. Zora turns to Henry, asking about the research samples. Henry explains that they must not be kept for themselves. They'll ensure the findings are shared with the world. And that wraps up the thrilling chaos of Jurassic World Rebirth 2025, a story where survival is tested, alliances are shattered, and the age of dinosaurs refuses to stay buried. From the terrifying rise of the Distortus Rex to the desperate escape of our heroes, this film reminds us that nature can never truly be controlled. What did you think of this new chapter in the Jurassic saga? Was it the rebirth fans were waiting for, or did it unleash more questions than answers? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you won't miss our next deep dive into the biggest movies and series. This is Starz Recapped, and I'll see you in the next story.